Hello, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural stream that of me being present, which makes me very nervous. Welcome so much to the tabletop mentorship program like live show. Gosh, the speaker series. You would figure that I would have rehearsed this in previously, and I did, and it immediately left my mind the moment I went live because I'm very professional. Who am I? I am your androgynous android game show host from the future, Nathan Blades. I will be hosting this season of the speaker series, and thank you so much for having me on. I am honored to be part of the show. So this show, we invite fabulous and talented folks from the world of the tabletop industry to share their insights and answer your questions, all in roughly 1 hour. We do have a delightful guest for you this afternoon/evening, depending on where you are in the world, tabletop game designer Sophie Williams. But before that, I would love to say thank you so much to our sponsor of the show, Jeff Engelstein and the New Voices in Gaming Initiative. The New Voices Scholarship helps innovative and diverse people new to tabletop gaming, new to the tabletop gaming industry with funding for admission and travel to events like the Tabletop Network Conference. You can find more about the New Voices in Gaming Initiative at newvoicesинgaming.org. Yes. We also have a Patreon and fantastic patrons that I would also love to say thank you to 3 patrons in particular. Thank you so much to Eric Reese, Curtis Fire, and Angela Belsol. Your support helps keep the Tabletop Mentorship Program keep running, and we love your support. You too can become a member of the Patreon by going to patreon.com/tabletop mentorship program, which is also in the video description and in chat right now. Please do offer us your fantastic support. But enough about this, enough about me. I am so honored to welcome to the stage the one and only Sophie Williams. Hi.
Hello. Hi. This is exciting.
I know, right? I mean, I flubbed the intro a little bit, but we got there. This is very sparkly.
Oh, wow. No, it's very exciting. And I'm really excited to be here. And I can't wait to talk about this stuff. I've got a load of opinions. They're all mine. So I'm ready to go. I mean, but yeah, I'm so happy that this mentorship program is still going so strong and getting better and better every time. So I'm so pleased that people can join us for this.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm definitely on to be part of it. And actually, this is a reversal of positions because you interviewed me previously on your podcast.
I did on Finding Games, where we talk to people about how they got into the tabletop gaming industry and what their journey was. So it's really interesting to have the roles reversed today.
I put the link to your podcast in the video in the chat and video description, so folks can go check it out.
Oh, lovely.
But, before we get into all that, I'm looking forward to asking you some questions as well after your presentation. But what is your presentation?
So I'm doing a presentation, and I've titled it affectionately, "No One Knows What They're Doing." And it's about imposter syndrome. And I've put as a little tagline, I've put why our dissatisfaction with ourselves is based on made up nonsense and how we can work through your imposter syndrome. So the whole point is this is all based on my experiences and my opinions. I'm not really a professional in terms of specifically on the imposter syndrome, but I think this all came from a really amazing chat I had with Grace and Mike on the Finding Games podcast, just about our philosophies towards our game design processes and how we approach what we do. And that was a really fun chat. So I think that they thought I'd be good for this. So there we go. I'm here.
Yeah, amazing. And those of you who are watching live, we'll be doing a Q&A after the presentation. If you do have any questions, hold on to them so you can ask either in the YouTube chat, on Twitter, or if you're a patron, there is a dedicated channel for Q&A. Even if we don't read your questions on the air today, we will be answering them after the show too. But enough of my flapping of my gums. I'm going to vanish and leave it all to you. Take it away, Sophie.
Oh, thank you. So as I said, my presentation today is entitled No One Knows What They're Doing, because I really believe that one of the biggest things about imposter syndrome is that we all feel, well, at least I do, I feel like I'm a secret failure and I'm just waiting for someone to find me out, and that one day someone's going to catch me and then it'll all go wrong. And so I felt it really important to point out that that's pretty much how everyone feels. There's very few people who are like, yeah, I've made it and I'm perfectly secure and everything's great. But we'll get more into the details of that. And the reason I've put the tagline there, why our dissatisfaction with ourselves is based on made up nonsense, is because I think a lot of the justifications we give ourselves for why we think that we're a secret failure is just based on us convincing ourselves, and that those things are quite often not real, or if they are real, they don't matter. But I'll go into that in more detail. Okay, so introduction. Hi, I'm Sophie, and who am I? Yeah, I mean, I'm just this random person. So to give you a bit of history about who I am, I've worked in and out of the tabletop games industry for about 15 years. I started as a Games Workshop store manager many, many years ago. Yeah, it's gone from there. I think it's really important at this point, because it only occurred to me after I'd written the presentation to point out at this point, I was the first female store manager in the UK, and pretty much across the company. There were some before me, I think in Europe, but there wasn't many of us. And I was definitely the first female store manager to be in the UK, and definitely, you know, in the wider company. And that experience was very educational, because I had to be extremely cocky and extremely confident about what I was doing, which was the complete opposite of my gut instinct. And I think that that's kind of really helped me push through some of these things. So I've got a bit of an early, sort of strength there, but I'm not saying it's good, because it manifests in different ways, but we'll get there. Then I went into the real world, and did some really boring jobs, and I didn't like it. But during that, I was playtesting still, and doing a lot of playtesting background and game design shenanigans as a sort of hobby. And then I did art management for the Games Workshop design studio for several years, and managed all of their freelance artists, working on all simultaneous projects at the same time. And now I'm the co-owner of Needy Cat Games, and I do a bit of everything. I do game design, I host the Finding Games podcast, I do general admin, I help coordinate the Nottingham Tabletop industry collective, which is, just rolls off the tongue. We did that simply because we kept bumping into people, because Nottingham is like a weird centre in the UK for tabletop games, and we kept bumping into people at shows, or Essen, and going, oh, we should hang out, and they'd have like an office 5 minutes down the road from where I live, and I hadn't seen them for a year. So we started doing that just to sort of build a community within our local area, but it's grown beyond that. And one day we'll get around to rebranding and taking the Nottingham out of it, but we haven't got there yet. But it is on Facebook and on Discord and on Twitter. So if you want to check that out, you're welcome to. But I'm going to say just a quick point here. There's two things I need to mention. One is, what I'm about to say here is based on my personal experiences and my personal opinions, okay? I'm not a professional. I'm not someone who has any qualifications specific to imposter syndrome or anything like that. I'm not a psychologist or a doctor or anything like that. I'm just someone who has opinions, and that's one thing. Point two is that I am autistic, and so therefore I might get a bit flappy. That's a thing. So if you see me flapping my hands a lot, I'm not in distress. That's my way of expressing emotion. So don't worry about that. Okay, cool. Shall we go on? Let's go. I mean, you can't talk back to me, so I don't know why I'm saying that. Right. Okay. So why me? So when Mike and Grace asked me, I full on panicked about doing this presentation. I was like, why could I possibly speak with authority on this? Who am I to have these opinions? I'm just some random person who has like a teeny tiny game design studio in the centre of England who not many people know about. And then I realised maybe I should just trust Mike and Grace's decision and their choice. Even if I couldn't understand why at the time. And they referenced the Finding Games podcast, because I talked to them, and a lot of the stuff that came out in that chat they felt was really valuable. And so I got to a point where I was like, oh, I've got to trust their guidance on this. And then after several weeks of overthinking it massively and procrastinating because I couldn't think of a starting point and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know where I was going, I just listened to the podcast that they referenced. And I was like, oh, I said loads of really good stuff. I don't even remember half of this. And so I wrote it all down, and I have entirely based this presentation on the stuff we talked about in that podcast. So feel free to go and check that out. But I think that was just a really interesting little microcosm of what imposter syndrome can do. And I thought that was quite fun. So what is imposter syndrome? I thought I'd do like a little definition to get us started. Merriam-Webster defines it as originally called imposter phenomenon, and as imposter syndrome, as it is now usually called, is commonly understood as a false and sometimes crippling belief that one's successes are a product of luck or fraud rather than skill. I think that's a really good definition, but I think something that people often forget about imposter syndrome, because they'll joke about it. They go, oh, you know, ha, 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 my imposter syndrome has imposter syndrome. And they kind of, and everyone, like a lot of people now are quite confident to admit that they have imposter syndrome. But what we do is we forget that there's a very real impact to imposter syndrome, and that it really affects a lot of people. And when we say affect, I don't just mean, oh, you have a bad day. I mean, this leads often to a lot of people feeling really miserable and people feeling very isolated, because the whole foundation of imposter syndrome, in my opinion, is the othering of yourself from your peers, right? So you go, those people over there, they know what they're doing, but I don't, and I'm a fraud. And then there's like a subconscious motivation there to distance yourself from those people because you don't want to be found out. Or you then don't do the thing that you want to do because you're scared that it won't be good enough. And that is a really awful thing to happen to anyone, and it's a real shame that it does happen so often. So I really hope that by talking through like some of the traps that we fall into, and then some of the tips that I've got to overcome those things, we can maybe make that a little bit easier for all of you out there. Okay, so common traps. Let's just get straight into it because I only have like a little bit of time and I could talk around this for hours. Okay, so comparing ourselves to others. This is like the number one trap. And I think it's you know, with social media, I think this is a huge hazard. I'm not saying social media is bad or anything like that, but it's really easy to look at people and go, well, look at them, look at what they're doing, look at all the amazing things they're doing. I'm not doing those things, therefore I am a failure, or I'm not as good as that person, or I perceive them to be far more successful than me, so therefore I'm not good and I have not done well, or therefore I'm a fraud and they're not. And for one thing, I think this just going down this route of thinking, we can't often stop ourselves. Sometimes it's just like an automatic thing. I get it all the time. If I see fellow game designers, there are loads out there. I could name loads of people who I look at and go, well, they've got their game designers. I'm not a game designer. They are. And this way lies madness. And it's not easy to stop yourself going down that, and we will go into tips on how to stop yourself going down those routes. But just some important things to remember at this stage. Experts, people who you might perceive as made it, or the best in the business, like the top 2% of people in the entire world at that thing, you know, they've probably practiced and tried to do things and failed more times than like a beginner has ever tried. The failure is part of the process, and it's just a case of practice. You know, you wouldn't want to start gymnastics and then get immediately upset that you couldn't do an Olympic level routine on your second day. That just isn't fair, and it's not realistic, or even to expect someone to do that in their first 6 months or their first year. But I think it's something that, especially with creative endeavors, because we look at it and go, yeah, but that I can draw that well, so why don't my pieces look that well put together? Or I can write a book, I do writing, so why can't I write, I don't know, Stephen King novels? That's not it's not realistic, and it's not fair on yourself to do that to you, to set yourself up for that expectation. And like social media, what you see as the final product is not the complete picture. If you're a game designer and you look at something like, I don't know, Fog of Love, and you go, well, my game is terrible compared to that. Well, yeah, you're looking at a final finished product that's had lots of different people's inputs and lots of like months or years of development and play testing, that's got professional graphic designers and professional artists all doing that. Your thing probably doesn't look like that. And also maybe your first published game doesn't look like that. You know, it's an evolution and it's a process. For years I was convinced that, well, I still struggle with the idea that, yeah, well, you know, I was basically what games have I done? Hellboy the board game was a big game that I was a big contributor to. I did most of it. Well, I did half of the core game and then pretty much most of the expansion stuff, except for a colleague of ours called Edwin, who did one of the expansions. But I still look at that and go, yeah, but you know, it's pretty easy to write. It's no Wingspan, is it? Even though it's like professionally made, it looks incredible. The graphic design on it's lovely. The artwork is beautiful because it's my Magnolia. And I look at it and go, yeah, but it's not Wingspan. And I think it's really easy for us to look at other people and think that our thing in comparison is not good enough. And what does good enough even mean? We'll go into that. And I just wanted to make this right at the start. As I said, no one knows what they're doing. I think it's a great little anecdote that I saw Neil Gaiman made, where he was talking about, he went to an event which was specifically for Neils. I don't know why, but there was a Neil-based event and they invited loads of people called Neil. And he was standing at the back of the room going, why am I even here? There's such talented, Neil Gaiman was standing at the back of the room going, there's such talented scientists, people who really change the world, you know, artists who inspire people. There's people here who are like climate scientists who are doing so much, you know, on the front lines to save the planet. What am I even doing here? I'm not worth being here. And he's standing next to a guy, and that guy just started saying to him, I don't know why I've been invited. I'm no one. Look at all these intelligent people who are so talented. And the guy he was talking to was not Neil Armstrong. I've put the wrong person. Oh well. But it was the guy who went up in the moon landings. And the thing is it made me realize that everyone thinks that they're a failure and no one knows what they're doing. And I think that's a really important point. As you can see by the fact that I've made mistakes. So there we go. So more common traps. Okay, so setting extremely ambitious goals. This is great. Ambition is great. I'm not saying don't be ambitious, but trying to be an Olympic level gymnast in your first year is not going to be realistic. Trying to get a professionally published game will happen to a few people, and that's great. And it's great to aim for it. But thinking that you're a failure if you don't do it in your first 6 months, your first year, your first 5 years isn't necessarily relevant for everyone. It's not going to be the thing that makes you ambitious. It's not going to be the thing that makes you good at what it's not going to be the thing that makes you good at what you do. It's not a measure of success for you necessarily. And I think that's a really important thing, is what are your measures of success? And just because you haven't got something published doesn't mean that you're bad at what you're doing. Just because you haven't got something in a professional book, it doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. Just because you haven't been published on a website, it doesn't mean that you know what you're doing. That's not necessarily a measure of success for everyone. And I think it's very easy for us to fall into a trap of going, well, I'll just pick the most arbitrary thing, the thing that's most obvious, getting a book published or getting a game made. And that, unless I get it published, if it doesn't go on Kickstarter and make £500,000 and get made, then it's not a success. That's such an arbitrary decision. There are thousands of games out there that have never been published, and they're still enjoyed by people. They're still played at proto spiels. They're still taken to conventions. Friends still enjoy them. They're still free to download games. People love them, and that is part of the process. And that doesn't have to be your measure of success. The effect of setting a goal too high is that too early means that you lose enthusiasm. The worst thing is losing enthusiasm and confidence in yourself. You might lose confidence in your project, or quite often people lose confidence as them as a person. I saw a TikToker saying the other day, there was a thing where he went, if I fail, that's fine, I get to try again. And then he was like talking to himself, and that person went, if I fail, that means I'm trash, this is trash, and I should never do it again. And obviously that is like a very tiny little boiling down of what our experience, like what our thought processes can be like in that situation of like, well, this is terrible, and it's a moral judgment on me as a person. It's not. It's not. Like, making games can be a goal in of itself. Making a game in the first place and getting a game finished is an incredible goal, and it's very difficult to do because a lot of people will procrastinate, or it just is a very challenging process. It's not an easy thing to do. So that is a great goal. It doesn't have to be published for it to be good, or for you to have achieved something. So this can then become a self-sabotage tactic, because then we go, if we can't do X, Y, and Z, then there's no point in even trying. And then we just sort of sit, well, I sit in this sort of existential space where I feel miserable. And that's that. So let's go on. So here's some more common traps. Moving goalposts. I'm going to describe to you a thought process, and I hope this might sound familiar, or I don't. I hope that no one has this familiar experience, and this is entirely for me because it's horrible, but it's what my brain does, which is we set a goal. So I might say, I just want to make, I see a gaming competition, yeah? Say there's a game design competition, and it's like, use 12 identical cards and make a game, and they can have anything on either side of the card. So you go, yes, okay, I'll do that thing. So then we go, I'll make that game, and that'll be fun. Okay, cool, I've made the game. Yeah, but it's not really a game unless I enter it into the competition. It's not really, I've not really achieved anything. So okay, I'll work really hard to make sure that it's doable to put into the competition. Okay, yeah, but I'm a bit of a failure unless I win the competition. Okay, so I'll hope that I win the competition, even if it gets that point. Yeah, but it's not, I mean, that's never happened to me, but like then it's like, well, yeah, but I'm a bit of a failure if it's not like well known and I've got a BGG page for it, right? So got to do that. Oh yeah, but then I'm not really a game designer until I've kickstarted that. And even if I kickstart it, I've got to have done a really good Kickstarter, which makes loads of money. It makes me really well known. And then, well, it's still not really, I'm not really a game designer until that's being sold in shops. And then, oh yeah, but it's only being sold in the UK. And the thing is this is the thought process that people go through, and nothing is ever enough. It is never enough, because the thing is the original goal was make a fun game and do that as a cool thing because it was fun. And suddenly it becomes about monetizing it, and not only monetizing it, but being seen to be successful by other people, regardless of whether you enjoy that process or not. Your enjoyment, your experiences are actually irrelevant in that thought process. What it starts becoming is more and more and more about the validation. And what I find really interesting is that monetizing everything, as I say here, is a trap. Trying to say, and it works with everything. How many times have you heard or felt compelled about turn your hobby into a side hustle? It's a weird foible of our society that we do not value, or we expect anything that we enjoy to become something that we make money from. And the moment you start making money from it, you put expectations on it, which mean you can't enjoy it as much. And because the moment you put expectations on it, you then start to fear failure, which is what we'll come on to in a minute. The moment you start fearing failure, then you start dwelling and dreading mistakes. And mistakes are natural, they're part of learning. So you can't ever get better if you're scared of making mistakes. So then what happens is you get stuck, and then you watch other people succeed and you go, oh my goodness, that person is doing so well, and I'm just stuck here doing this thing, trying to make it successful, and it's not working. And it becomes this horrible loop. And moving goalposts feeds that constant imposter syndrome feeling. So yeah, that's a trap. You don't need to make money from something for it to be a success. Making the thing and enjoying making the thing is enough. or enjoying the process, not even finishing it. If you enjoy the process of creating something and never gets finished, that can be enough. Okay. And that is really important. And I think it's really valuable to try and find our joy and pursue joy, and that be our goal, as opposed to pursuing money. And if you want to monetize it, you want to be successful, you want to take it on Kickstarter, that's great. But we'll go on to reassessing your reasons why in a little while. Yeah, so that's my little rant on that. I could go off for hours, but I'm not going to. So common traps continue. So obsession with failure. So as I said before, when you put expectations, especially when they have money on them, that are far too ambitious, or you change the goalposts so that they become too ambitious, especially if you're trying to make money from it at the same time, you start moving the goalposts. Okay. So what happens is because we get so focused on trying to always be a success, we start shying away from failure. It's always like it's hot or something. We don't want to go near it. We don't risk going near it. But the thing is you can't get better without making mistakes. Could you imagine trying to learn how to skateboard and decide at the very start of the process that you're never going to fall off? It doesn't work. You are going to fall off. That's part of the process. That's part of the experience. And if you're too scared to fall off, you'll never get on the skateboard in the first place. So it becomes this sort of loop where we can't change our thinking processes. But also what happens when we're scared of failure and our obsession with failure is that we focus on every failure. And then if we ever have another failure, because it has consequences, because we've put huge amounts of expectation on it, we then revisit every previous failure as well and see them negatively. So we go, oh, my Kickstarter didn't succeed. Well, I failed because I should have organized playtesting earlier, and I should have organized reviews to go out earlier. Well, that was my failure. And then, but then I should have really made it earlier, and I should have got promotions out earlier, and it becomes like a stack of dominoes that are all falling. And then that means that every subsequent failure becomes greater than the previous in terms of the pain and the experience you feel and the stress, because it's not just that one mistake, it's the weight of all the previous mistakes plus that one every time. And that's just it's the stick that broke the camel's back. You're not going to be able to handle that level of stress and anxiety. And that is why we need to learn to put that down and to accept failure as just part of the thing that we're doing. And it's not easy. It isn't easy. I'm not saying it's an easy process, but we'll get there. And again, this is a self-sabotage method, because the fear of experiencing the weight of the previous failures stops us from doing anything more, or stops us from risking anything more. Or when we take a big risk and it doesn't work out, we then use it as evidence to prove that we were right in the first place and we shouldn't have tried. And that's not the case at all. If you want to try, that's fine. But it shouldn't. The fear of failure shouldn't be the thing that stops you from trying a thing. But we'll get into that. Okay, so I've done a lot of rambling, and I'm quite a way into the thing. I think I'm doing all right for time, so we'll go. So some ways to overcome these traps. Hopefully you can see that a lot of imposter syndrome is rooted in what I like to call made up nonsense. And what I mean by that is it's a lot of us convincing ourselves, or at least me convincing myself in my experience, that I can't do X because, or I am a fraud because, or I have failed because I'm not good enough. And what it is it's just things we tell ourselves that have no necessary rooting in the real world at all. And even if they do have a root, like, oh, I absolutely shouldn't have done that thing because that's why my Kickstarter failed. That's fine. But that doesn't mean you can't try again, or it doesn't mean that whole project was a failure. It just means your Kickstarter wasn't successful. And that's painful when you sit with it for a second, but for a long time. I mean, Robot Fight Club last year did not go the way we wanted it to, but we took some time to recover, and now we're moving forward. That's part of the process. But it becomes this thing where you are listening to the stuff that you have created more than you're looking at the reasons why you did it in the first place. You're listening to those reasons, and that's not. It's just made up. It's not anything you have to give any weight to. The only person who has power to change your perspective is you. So here's some tips. Okay. The number one mantra we have to have for going forward is that nothing will be perfect. Nothing you do is ever perfect because perfection is impossible. Okay. So that's okay. Perfection will never be possible. We all make mistakes. That's fine. Okay. So that's the thing to retain. So number one, when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by imposter syndrome, that I do is revisit my basics. Okay. What was the reason that I started doing this stuff in the first place? Yeah. Why did I start designing, writing, drawing, making things? Why did I start doing that? Was it because I love doing it? Okay. Do I love doing it right now? If no, why? What do I love about it? What did I love then? So just do one thing that brings your joy back. Find your joy and bring your joy back. So for me, I love seeing people playing my games and enjoying them. That is a really big part of my motivation, okay? Or with my art, I just love making art because I love the process of making art. I find it quite meditative, yeah, okay? So there's two completely different things. So for either one of those, so if I love seeing people play with something I create and enjoy it, the thing I can do when I'm feeling overwhelmed is put down the thing that I'm doing that's stressing me out and go and find a way to play a game with someone, to see them give me feedback and enjoy a game I've made, even if it's a game I've made previously. Doesn't have to be something that's relevant to now. And find that joy, mine it, use that to motivate you. Or if it's like making the process of making art is quite meditative and I find it quite relaxing. So maybe I don't need to sell everything. Maybe I could just go and make a small piece of art for half an hour and find my joy. And then revisit why you picked your goals in the first place. So why do you have to sell your thing? Or was it just because that's what you do? Because I won't lie, that's what we did with Robot Fight Club. We were very much like, well, from the inception of Needy Cat Games, we were very much like, well, one day we want to just be a proper game design studio, because what we do at the moment is Needy Cat Games primarily works where other companies will come to us, say, for example, like Mantic Games, and they will go, we want to make a series of miniatures. Here's the miniatures that we want to make, or maybe there's a different reason for it, but that's specific to Mantic. And we'd like a game to go with it, please, that will package it up and make it a self-contained thing. And then we make a game based on a brief from a client. It's a slightly different niche to what a lot of people do. A lot of people will just make games because they love making games and they'll come up with the ideas completely apropos of nothing, and then they make their game. But we don't do that. We work with clients, and sometimes it can be nothing to do with miniatures. It can just be like, I want a party game for 6 to 12 people. Can you make that? And it needs to be no more than 62 cards or whatever it is. Yeah. And then we make that game. And it's a really different process to what a lot of people do. And we've always said, well, what we'd really love to do is be our own game design studio where we're making our own games. So we were always obsessed with getting something on Kickstarter and starting our own game design and starting to launch our own games. And the reason we did that, I think, was largely because that's what game design studios are. Right? Like, you don't hear of many studios doing what we do. You hear of lots of people going, oh, they're a small game design studio. They're an indie game design studio with graphic designers and artists and marketers and all of that. And that's what we've always wanted, because it's what everyone else has. And actually, when we did the Kickstarter, it took us almost a year to go, you know what? We don't enjoy any of that. I don't enjoy worrying about marketing. I don't enjoy doing the manufacturing. I don't enjoy stressing about having to get someone to do social media every single day. All of that stuff's horrible. I don't like it at all. So why don't we just keep doing the thing we love, which is writing games? Because that's the bit we enjoy. And it took us a long time, but we've reassessed our goals and realized that our goals were simply based on the industry standard, rather than really assessing what we love and what we want to do and pursuing that. And I mean, it's like recently I've started making terrain because I love making terrain. And someone asked me, do you know anyone who can make demo boards for miniatures games? And I was like, well, I can do it, because that's the thing that I can do from my old days at Games Workshop. And I did it. And I was like, I love this. So I've just said to people, if they want me to make one and they can come and collect the board, I'll do it, because I can. If it's a thing that I can do and do well, then great. That's the thing I love doing, you know. awesome. But it's not part of our like 5-year plan for Needy Cat Games, but it's also a thing I love. So I'm trying to fold that in now. Does the thing that you decided was your goal make you happy? If the thought of publishing a book is so stressful to you that you can't even bear to the thought of contacting publishers, why is that your goal? Maybe reassess that. Think about a different goal. Think about something else that you enjoy. Maybe writing short stories that you put in, birthday cards for your friends and family as presents is the thing that actually makes you really happy. I don't know. I've just pulled that out of the air. But that's the sort of thing that can be your goal. You don't have it. It doesn't have to be one day I will be in the top 2%. Why do you have to be in the top 2%? 98% of everyone else isn't in the top 2%. I'd love to be like Elizabeth Hargreaves or 100 other game designers I can't remember right now, but I'm not. I'm not very well known, and that's fine. I used to stress out about it loads, and I just realised that it doesn't bother me actually. I don't enjoy the process of maintaining a social media presence. I don't enjoy the process of being someone who's always, I'd love to be asked onto panels, but I'm not going to go out there and pursue people invite me onto panels all the time because that isn't actually my priority and it's not something that brings me joy. So the process of getting to that point is not something that appeals to me. So I've realigned my goals. I don't need to be well known to enjoy what I do. And I think it's very easy to look at those people who we see as the people we want to be like. I go, why aren't I that person? Well, 98% of people aren't that person, and that's fine. All of those people aren't failures. They're just not that top person. And that's okay. If you want to do that, you go and pursue your dreams, but do it because it is a dream and not because you feel like that's the only way to be a success. It's just worth questioning yourself on that. Okay, embracing failure is part of growth. I've mentioned that failure is really important. It's nothing you make the first time. No first draft of anything ever is good the first time, really, unless you're extremely lucky or you carve marble or something. Like, making the thing the first time means it will be a bad thing, but creating it is more important than theorizing about it, right? And I have a whole rant on this on our game design course that we do, but making a thing that is bad means you can fix the thing. If you never make the thing because you're scared of making it, or you never make the thing because you want it to be perfect before you put it on paper, it doesn't exist and it is not a thing. So having a thing to fix and to make better is always a better step than having the perfect, unrealized, non-existent thing. And so it will not be good the first time, and being okay with that is fine. The process of making it good, you will make mistakes at every stage. Every time you play test that game, it will have problems. That is fine. And telling yourself that before you go into a playtesting session can have a huge impact on how you take feedback. Thinking this is it, it's perfect, it's going to be perfect, everyone's going to love it, and then coming back with loads of feedback, that hurts. And it does hurt because you're showing someone a part of your soul. You love it, you're proud of it, and then someone goes, oh, I don't like it, it's not very good. Oh, that hurts. It's really difficult to deal with. But the more you do it, the more you accept, the more you confront that failure and acknowledging it as an essential part of your growth and your improvement, the easier it becomes because it's practice makes perfect, like everything else. And also the more positive it becomes. Like we actually now, like I'm not saying we like playtesting, but I look forward to playtesting because I know I can't get this game any better without having that support and that feedback. So even though it's still a thing where I'm like, oh, it's painful, I don't like it, I still am like, I've got to a point now where I'm like, actually, yeah, once we get this playtesting done, then the next stage can happen. And I can take all of that feedback and put it into the game, and hopefully that'll improve it. So embracing failure is so important to the process. Using placeholders if something is too difficult, or you're not enjoying it, or you're getting filled with dread, or you're just getting overwhelmed with the idea that everything is broken and nothing is working, is fine. An example off the top of my head is, I don't know, say you're designing a game where you draw some cards, but you don't know if that's going to happen at the start or the end of the turn, and you don't know how many cards there's going to be, or there's a random number based on something, but you haven't decided what that is yet, or it's not finalized, you can just go, well, we're just going to do it at the start of the term for now. We're just going to roll a dice. That's not going to be how it's done in the final thing, but for now, so that I can move on to the next stage of development or this other part of the game, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stick a placeholder in there. And that's fine. It's not complete. It's messy. It's clunky, but that's fine for now because I can always revisit it. And usually when you've moved away from it, put something down for a while, moved away, done something else that brings you joy because you feel fulfilled doing it, and then come back to it, be that immediately, the next week or in a year, then that can be a thing that gives you power to overcome it. So using clunky, bad things in place of other good things is fine. Like, no writer writes a book by writing the finished novel immediately. Like, if you need to put in a chapter that just says these things happen in bullet point form, and then you move on to the chapter you want to write, fine. If you need to hash it all out in just scrappy bits of paper first and then go back and write proper sentences, fine. Whatever gets you moving forward with the process. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to look nice. All of my prototypes on scrappy bits of paper, handwritten, and terrible artwork. Like, if there's any artwork at all, it's usually a stick man or like a square coloured in. That's the best I do. Because making it is more important and the process is more important. And that also avoids all those, oh God, this doesn't look good. Okay, well, fine, get some photos off the internet and slap them on there. If that's what you're getting stressed out about, that's good enough. Good enough is fine. Good enough is fine for now. And becoming at peace with the concept of good enough is really key, I find, to battle imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome thrives with the expectation of perfection. Accept as well that your thing is not for everyone. And if you make something for everyone, you probably won't enjoy making it because it'll be bland as anything. So just enjoy, find your people who enjoy it, or do it for you, or whatever your goal is that you've set, and aim your thing at those people and find your cheerleaders. Perfection is the enemy of done. You aim for something to be perfect, it will never be finished. And that's just the fact of it. Sorry, my cat has decided to jump on the table and start cleaning himself, so he's shaking the table. So sorry if the screen is going a bit wobbly there. We are called Needy Cat Games, so it's kind of inevitable, I'm afraid. Okay, this is the last point. I'm almost on time. There we go. Right, trust your friends, your family, your colleagues, your clients, your employers, whoever it is who is your cheerleader in that situation, okay? Other people around you have faith in you, and you may not believe that, but they do. And they will lift you up and give you support and advice. And if you don't have a community that will do that for you, find one. Every single niche interest and passion and hobby out there has a great uplifting community somewhere. And yes, I'm sorry, there are some communities that aren't like that. And sometimes people come up against those people, and you don't need to listen to those people, okay? Because the whole point of imposter syndrome is that you will latch onto those people. And I think there was a great quote, and I tried to look up who said it, and I'm afraid every single place I looked, it had different people saying it. So I don't know who said this, but it's don't listen to advice from people. No, don't listen to criticism from people who you wouldn't take advice from. Now, obviously, there's going to be times when that's not relevant. Obviously, I'm sure there's loads of people who come up with edge cases or little like details where that's not the case. But what I'm saying in general is, if you're making a game and your goal is to make a cool game that your friends and your family enjoy, don't listen to some random off the internet who you would never take advice on the game from, telling you that it's a bad idea. It's irrelevant to you. Doesn't matter. But the imposter syndrome will latch onto that person and listen to that person above everyone else. And it's very hard to overcome that. And that's why on the bad days, ask for help from anyone in your community, be that a family member, a friend, someone who's part of your Facebook group or a Discord community, from an employer, just saying, can you just give me some feedback on this and help me because I'm really feeling like this is bad, or from a client asking for feedback. They might give you difficult feedback, but as we've said before, embracing failure is part of the process. If they've got feedback for you, which is difficult to handle, still means that the thing can improve, doesn't it? So that's actually good in a way. So The number one thing to remember when you're dealing with imposter syndrome is you do not have to deal with it alone. You are not alone. There are so many people, especially in the tabletop games community, who will lift you up. And it is so important to remember that. There are people out there who will always champion you and always give you feedback and always support you. And that is priceless. And your imposter syndrome will tell you to never speak to those people. Your imposter syndrome will tell you that if you don't want to be found out, you should not go and ask for help. You shouldn't talk to those people. They might find you out. You might not be as good. You might not be good enough. That's all just made up nonsense. People will always lift you up if you find the right community. The tricky thing you've got now is to find your community. And I'm afraid I can't help you with that because everyone has different needs. But I'm sure as this community, this tabletop mentorship program is a community, and there are people within this community who will help you find communities for other things as well outside of this. So, you know, the thing is with imposter syndrome, we all make mistakes. We all think that everyone else is better than us. We all think that there is someone else out there who's doing better than us. And maybe there is, and that's fine, because we all don't have to be in that top 1%. And we all don't need to be the best at everything all the time. And we all don't need to make millions of pounds from what we do. You don't have to do this alone. And there we go. That's me. So,
hey, amazing. Can we get some snaps, some claps, and some cheers in the chat for Sophie? Because that was amazing. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, I loved that. I felt a lot of that. I was sitting through and being like, oh, the feelings. I've been there. I've felt that in my own creative processes. Like, oh, I'm in this photo and I do not like it.
That's the thing is, I don't want to say, I hope you have this experience too, because it's a horrible experience. I don't want anyone else to have these thoughts and processes, but I suspect a lot of people do.
Absolutely. It's super, super relatable, right? We are in a position to do some Q&A. We are absolutely in the process to go and answer some questions from chat. I have a question for you real brief while people are thinking of bits and pieces. But for those who do not know, across this series, we will be taking questions on both YouTube, on Twitter, and if you're a patron, on the Discord, and I will be keeping an eye on all three and trying to juggle all of them at once. So if you have a question, absolutely feed it in. Also, chat did say that you did get the right Neil. It is Neil Armstrong on that particular quote. So yeah,
is it? I panicked because I was like, because you know what? My brain went to Louis Armstrong and I panicked. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to accept that that's a mistake and move forward because I'm doing a talk on how to make mistakes and it be okay. So I'm just like, I'm just going to move forward. So for sure, there we go.
My question for you is like, have you ever like started a project where in the early stages of it you were like, this isn't the one, like this isn't it, and then just kind of like let it go? And how did you get to the point where you like let it go? Because I find that really hard.
Yeah, it's really difficult every single time. So point one is that on the Needy Cat Games website, needycatgames.com, you can see our game development process. And we break it down, and it's the same one we use for every client because we find it really easy and really transparent when we're talking to people who don't know about game development to talk. When we say like, oh, we're in the middle of mechanical draft or whatever, they can see exactly what that means. So if you want to go and check that out, you absolutely can. It's just completely free to access. It's on our website. But and what we find
in the YouTube chat right now.
Brilliant, thank you. The thing is what happens from personal, this is our game design process and everyone does it differently, but this is ours, is what we tend to do is we always overcomplicate games. We always think this is it. It's great. We've got loads of ideas. We put in all the mechanics, all of them, like just everything, dice rolling and card shuffling and all sorts of really complicated stuff. And we think this is great. And then we play test it. And the more we play test it, we just go, oh, you know what? Don't need that in there. And we have to be really honest with ourselves. And what ends up happening is sometimes we do ditch a whole game. There are times when we've made a game and we've play tested it for months, and then we've got to a point where like there are so many questions that are still coming up even after 3 months, 4 months of play testing that we can't, this game is not letting us fix those problems. So we need to take a different route. And a lot of that is based on feedback. we've done that. But also what I find is most common is that we will wholesale remove whole chunks of games and leave a much simpler game in its wake. So we'll go, there's a nugget of something in here, but it's either it's too long or it's too, or people are getting confused at this. Like if there's a different rounds in the game, this particular round is really confusing and people aren't enjoying it. What happens if we just take that bit out completely? And quite often things then start working. Or what we find, we always feel it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen those cup stacking videos where like people stack up cups and then when they condense them down, they sort of do this really quick condensing down. And what happens is I always feel our game design, our process is very much like we stack the cups. There's all these things built on other things, built on other things, built on other things. And then the longer we go, we collapse the cups down because we get rid of mechanics. Everything starts getting unified. Every mechanic goes back to the same thing. Like, I don't know, it might be like a 4-up on a dice or whatever it is, the same mechanic. Then we're like, why are we doing card drawing on that bit when everything else is based on dice rolling? Let's just turn that into dice rolling too and use the same mechanic. And so it's like collapsing it all down. And that tends to be our process. And that is very much embracing this is broken and it doesn't work. And quite often those mechanics sit on the shelf for a year or two and might be pulled out for something completely different. But yes, that was a very long answer to your very short question.
Oh no, but very, very good, very good question. Definitely, very good answer, rather. I definitely know the process of kind of enjoying the refinement process, and definitely like finding that the idea might not work there, but it might work in the future. Who knows? Some praise and some additional questions from chat. Neil Dixon says, "Great talk, Sophie. Thank you. Coincidentally, I was listening to your talk while painting some Hellboy miniatures, so it's all getting full circle in there."
Oh, that's nice.
Fleischer, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, apologies. Thank you so much for sharing your story. How do you tell the difference between regular negative self-talk about an idea and your own artistic intuition telling you an idea might not work?
Test it. That's the best way you can do it. And obviously, there's going to be different ways you test that depending on what your creative endeavor is. With game design, you might put it in front of someone, and that might be play testing, but it could always just be asking someone within the tabletop games community to give it a read, or even if you talk through the game and get feedback from them, and you might be like, I'm feeling like this is shit. Is it shit? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't probably swear. Sorry.
It's post-watershed in the UK. It's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I do apologise. It's nearly 9 p.m. here. I do apologise. I feel this is bad. Is it bad? And they might go, no, it's not bad. Or they might go, bits of it are bad, or bits of it don't work, or I don't understand this bit. And then what happens is usually those people reflect back to you like a gentler version as well. So you might go, this is terrible. Everything I've done is terrible. This whole game needs to go in the bin. I hate it. It's awful. And then someone go, no, I get it, but this bit is really sticky. It's confusing. I don't understand. And then you go, oh, okay, well, that's the thing I can concentrate on fixing. It won't be fixed because very rarely are games fixed immediately with one change. But what you will get is you will get a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not all bad. It doesn't all have to go in the bin. And even if something does have to go in the bin, don't bin it. Just put it away, because you can like scavenge from that for other games. You can take bits out, and you can remove. You can remove all sorts of like details, scrub off the serial number and use it for something else. There's all sorts of things you can do to use that again in another way. So don't ever actually throw anything away or delete it completely, because even then it might be just an inspiring thing. Looking back on it 5 years later, you'll be like, oh my goodness, this was terrible. Look how far I've come. And that can be a huge deal as well. We were just clearing out our spare room, found loads of old game designs, and they were awful. But it was great, because I was like, oh my goodness, I thought I have not improved. Like, I feel very stuck in my niche at the moment, simply because we've had a lot of stuff going on for the last year. I don't feel like I've improved a lot as an individual, and looking back at my early work, I'm like, oh no, I definitely have. And that can be nice as well. So
No, for sure, for sure. Additional seasoning to keep on your design spice rack for later.
Mm-hmm.
Our last question for the evening,
Mm-hmm.
from Stuff by Bez. Do you think that imposter syndrome? Let's try that again from the top. Do you think that imposter syndrome is kind of a sign that you care about what you're doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think you can't do something like this and not care.
Mm,
And I think it is an inevitable consequence because it's where you focus all your energy about caring
mm,
about what you do into like inward. You're focusing it all inward.
mm,
Or at least it is for me. I focus inward whenever I'm doing anything. I overthink everything, and I think about all the consequences of everything that could possibly potentially happen in the future. And that becomes
mm,
quite overwhelming. And then it turns into like imposter syndrome for me.
mm,
So, but that's because I care, because I want it to be good and I want to be seen to be doing good. That's a big motivator for me personally, is I want to be seen to do well. Um,
mm,
but working out that you can still care about something but accept that it won't always be the best thing you do is a
mm,
really important thing for me, for I think for growing past imposter syndrome. And I'm not saying you can get rid of it completely, it's always there, but yes, I absolutely agree with Bess that it's like it's a symptom of you caring a lot,
mm,
but
mm.
it's not a productive way to use your energy.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for
Mm-hmm.
sending those questions in. There are additional questions in chat, although I don't think we have time for them on this particular stream. But
Yeah,
would
there's
you
a
be
lot.
interested in, would you continue to answer questions on Twitter, for example?
Yeah,
If
yeah, of
people
course.
people
Yeah.
watch the stream?
Everyone's welcome to follow me on Twitter and ask me questions at any time. I'm patchy because,
Yes.
as I said, I realized that social media was a bit of a stress trigger for me. I realized that I wasn't really
Mm,
enjoying the process of like feeling like I had to be on there all the time. But it's
mm,
not like
mhm.
I'm gone for weeks. I'm just gone for a day or two at a time. So feel free
Okay.
to at me. And I'm also, where else am I? I'm on Twitter. We're on Instagram, Needy Cat Games Instagram as
Ooh.
well. I'm also on
Mhm.
TikTok, if that's a thing that the kids want to do, where I make terrain, because I said I really like terrain. So it's Sophie Makes Terrain on TikTok, if that's the thing you care
Mm.
about. So there we go. I'm all over the place.
Amazing. And that follows into the questions like, where can we find you? You've nailed that already. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Give me a second. I'm going to go and bring this stream on home. But thank you so much for joining me. That was like super, super great. I feel way more motivated now.
Yay! That's a
I
good
suffer
thing.
from that imposter syndrome stuff a lot too. It can be Twitter does make that like really bad occasionally. So
Mm.
you've given me a boost to be kind of like,
Yes,
no, my stuff
social
is good
media is
actually.
trash for imposter syndrome, because you just watch people
Mm,
being really successful and then you find that I find that really overwhelming. And so
mm,
yeah, I think it's really easy to fall into a trap of going, everyone else is better than me and no one knows that
mm.
I don't know what I'm doing, and actually nobody knows what they're doing ever. That's fine.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely how it be. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ah, gosh, wasn't that amazing, everybody? My mind is blown. My mind is expanded. We are thinking and inventing new things immediately. There's already games on my own, kind of like how did I put it before? Game design spice rack that I'm kind of like, oh no, now is definitely the time to maybe revisit them and everything. But that is all the time we have for today. I'm just going to go and pull up the information for our next session. Our next session is going to be on June 20th at 1 p.m. We do have the graphic handy. Let's go get the graphic handy. Hold on. Professionals. I had this Benita Core at 1 p.m. On June 20th will be our next guest. Which the information will be up on stream a little bit as we close out the show. And while you're reading that, I will tell you, I have once again been your androgynous Android game show host from the future, Nathan Blades, tabletop RPG designer and streamer, and I'm looking so forward to meeting so many fantastic people in this industry and learning so much more about the world of board game design, tabletop RPG design, and just growing. And I hope you will all also be super excited on joining me on that journey too. But for now, we're going to bid you farewell.